Chisom and Amaka's friendship has always been the envy of everyone who knows them. From childhood playmates to confidants, they have shared everything, dreams, secrets, and a fierce loyalty that no one could ever doubt. They seem like the perfect pair, unbreakable, inseparable. But beneath the surface, there was more than just friendship between them. Amaka had always been the quiet, supportive friend, always there for Chisom, with a kind word or a shoulder to lean on. But deep down, she harbored a secret, longing for Chisom's fiancé, Ifeanyi. It was love that never made sense to her, but it grew with time, like a vine silently wrapping itself around her heart. When Ifeanyi finally proposed to Chisom, it was everything she had dreamt of, for her friend, but not for herself. Amaka smiled through the tears, clapping, hugging, and celebrating what should have been the happiest moment of both of them. But inside, a storm was brewing. Every whispered congratulations, every loving glance between Ifeanyi and Chisom felt like a dagger on her chest. As Chisom shared every detail of the wedding plans, Amaka forced herself to smile, but her heart twisted with envy. She told herself it was just temporary, that the love she had for Ifeanyi was fleeting, that their bond would endure. But every passing day brought new cracks in their perfect friendship. Amaka's subtle manipulations, her carefully concealed resentment, and her deep, dangerous jealousy. The real question was, how long would Amaka keep up on the art before everything she had carefully built came crashing? And when the truth finally emerged, who would be left standing? The crack was just beginning to show, but no one knew how much worse it would get. Amaka's jealousy was no longer just a quiet ache in her chest. It was a fire, one that needed to be fed. The moment Ifeanyi's proposal to Chisom had been accepted, Amaka knew she had to act quickly. She couldn't let her best friend marry a man she had always secretly craved for. But instead of confrontation, Amaka chose a more subtle path, manipulation. It started with small harmless comments. You know, I heard Ifeanyi talking to someone that very time, intimate way, but I don't want to say anything, Amaka would say with a coy smile. At first, Chisom brushed it off, too blinded by love to see the seed of doubt being planted, but the doubt began to take root, and Amaka just knew how to water it. As Ifeanyi's business began to suffer from strange, unexplained setback, lost contracts, failed meeting, and financial issues, Amaka would conveniently be there to comfort Chisom. Maybe he's not as responsible as you think. All those late night meetings and sudden disappearance sound suspicious to me. Her words were like poison dripping into Chisom's ear, and though her friend resisted at first, the whispers were starting to take their toll. To make matters worse, Chisom's own life started to feel like a maze. As Amaka's influence grew stronger, Chisom found herself questioning things she had even doubted before. Why did Ifeanyi keep making excuses for his behavior? Why was he suddenly so distant, so preoccupied with his business? Maybe Amaka was right. Maybe Ifeanyi wasn't the perfect man she had believed him to be. But Amaka's plan didn't stop at mere doubt. She needed chaos, so she took matters into her own hands, sabotaging Ifeanyi's businesses from the shadow. It wasn't hard. A misplaced email here, a conversation overheard at the right moment there. It was all she needed to watch the once thriving empire of Ifeanyi crumble. Chisom began noticing things, but she could never pin down the cause. She felt increasingly isolated, unsure of who to trust, and worst of all, she found herself leaning more and more on Amaka. As Chisom's life began spiraling out of control, Amaka remained the ever-present pillar of support, pulling her friend deeper into her web. Chisom unease grew, but Amaka's smile remained unchanged, a mark of kindness, a veil hiding her sinister intentions. The plan was working, but this was only the beginning. What Amaka didn't realize was that the darkness she was soaring would soon consume everything around her, and the consequences of her action would soon spiral far beyond her control. The delicate web plan of Amaka had spun was beginning to tighten around Chisom's heart. Each subtle push, each planted seed of doubt, had led her to this moment where Amaka knew that the time had come to truly break the bond between her best friend and the man she loved. It all started innocently enough. As Amaka set her plans into motion, she knew just how to create the perfect storm. A carefully crafted set of images of Ifeanyi laughing and talking with another woman in a setting that seems far too intimate to be innocent. The woman in the pictures was a former colleague, someone with whom Ifeanyi had worked closely in the past. but Amaka didn't need the full context. All she needed was enough to manipulate the truth. She knew the power of a woman's intuition, especially one as trusting as Chisom. So Amaka made sure the images accidentally ended up on Chisom's phone. She found them in a shared folder, acted surprised, even hurt. Chisom, I didn't want to show you this, but I thought you should know, she said, her voice full of concern, as if she was the only one who truly cared. Chisom's heart dropped at the moment she saw the pictures. The laughter, the closeness, everything in the images felt like a betrayal. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Was it just a misunderstanding? Could there be an innocent explanation? But the pain in her chest, the crushing ache of being deceived, told her everything she needed to know. The trust she had for Ifeanyi was shattered. The doubt Amaka had planted now seemed undeniable, and Chisom's worst fear had been realized. She pulled away from Ifeanyi, both physically and emotionally, retreating into herself. His calls and messages went unanswered, and whenever he tried to explain, Chisom's heart wouldn't listen. The damage had been done. Amaka, ever the supportive friend, was there at every turn, her arms open for comfort, her words always soothing. You deserve better, Chisom. He doesn't deserve your love. He is not the man you thought he was, Amaka would say, holding her friend close. I will always be here for you. You don't have to go through this alone. But behind her comforting facade, Amaka was calculating. She saw the cracks in Chisom's heart, and like a predator, she prepared to make in for the kill. Each comforting hug, each tear-filled conversation was a subtle reinforcement of her control over Chisom's emotion. Amaka wasn't just comforting her friend, she was manipulating her. She was slowly rewriting Chisom's reality, painting Ifeanyi as a villain and herself as loyal, selfless best friend who had been right all along. For Chisom, Amaka's embrace felt like safety, like a lifeline in the middle of a storm. But what she didn't see, what she couldn't see, was that Amaka was the one who had created the storm in the first place. As Chisom began to distance herself from Ifeanyi, Amaka watched from the shadows. A satisfied smile tugged at her lips, but she knew that this was just one piece of the puzzle. The real test was yet to come. Would Chisom truly believe in the lies, or would the truth eventually rise to the surface? Lines between love and lies were becoming increasingly blurred, and soon Chisom will have to choose between the woman who claimed to be her best friend and the man whose heart she had once trusted with her own. Ifeanyi had never known Chisom to be anything but warm, loving and trusting. Her sudden coldness, the way she began pulling away from him without any explanation, left him confused and disoriented. Every attempt to reach her, every phone call, every heartfelt message was met with distance, as though she was deliberately shutting him out. He couldn't understand it. Had he done something wrong? Or was there something else going on that he didn't know about? What Ifeanyi didn't know was that Amaka was behind this. She had worked tirelessly to plant the seed of doubt in Chisom's heart, manipulating every interaction, every look until Chisom's trust in him was shattered. But now that Chisom was pushing Ifeanyi away, Amaka saw the perfect opportunity to step in. With a carefully crafted art of empathy, Amaka began to flirt with Ifeanyi, slowly working her way into his emotional space. At first, it was subtle, a lingering touch on the arms, a soft laugh at one of his jokes, the way she asked if he was okay when he seemed troubled. To anyone else, it might have seemed like nothing more than a friend offering support, but to Ifeanyi, it felt different. He was vulnerable, confused and hurt by Chisom's withdrawal, and Amaka's closeness, her seemingly genuine concern, became an unexpected balm to his wounded pride. Amaka was always there, listening attentively when he spoke of his troubles, and before long, he found himself confiding in her. The line between friendship and something more began to blur. Though he never meant for it to go this way, Amaka was there for him when Chisom wasn't, and he couldn't help but feel a spark of something dangerous that he pushed at the back of the mind. He didn't know it yet, but he was falling into a trap. One was set with the utmost care by the one person who could easily manipulate his emotions, Chisom's best friend. Then, just as the tension between Chisom and Ifeanyi reached its peak, fate, or rather Amaka's hand, intervened in the most shocking way. One evening, as Ifeanyi was driving home from a particular heated conversation with Chisom, a mysterious accident occurred. His car swerved off the road, flipping into a ditch, narrowly missing a tree that could have certainly killed him. It was a terrifying scene, a moment of sheer chaos and destruction. The Authorities called in an accident the result of a slippery road and a momentary lapse in concentration, but the truth was far darker. Amaka has orchestrated the entire event, tampering with Ifeanyi's car to ensure that he would be put in a dangerous, life-threatening situation. Her reasoning was simple: to make Ifeanyi depend on her. If he was hurt, if he feared for his life, he would have no choice but to lean on one person who had been there for him, the one person who seemed to understand him when Chisom no longer did. When the news reached Chisom, she was devastated. She rushed to the hospital, her heart pounding with worry. But Amaka was already there, waiting, her face the picture of concern and sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Chisom," she said, her voice trembling as she hugged her friend tightly. "I didn't want this to happen, but I'm here for him. I'll be here for you too. We'll all get through this together." Chisom, torn between her love for Ifeanyi and the overwhelming sense of betrayal she felt, was once again in Amaka's arms, emotionally confused, vulnerable and desperate for reassurance. But Amaka, ever the master of manipulation, knew exactly what to say and do to keep her in control. She gently pushed Ifeanyi's love for Chisom further away, all this while playing the roles of a selfless friend. Chisom and Ifeanyi found themselves pulled into the chaos of this tragic event. Amaka's role as the shoulder to lean on became more solidified, and with it her hold on both of their lives tightened. How much longer could they remain oblivious to the deadly secret she was hiding behind? Chisom's world was turned upside down. Between the accident, her fractured relationship with Ifeanyi, and Amaka's ever-present support, she was more confused than ever. She couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It was as if a heavy shadow had fallen over her life, one that she couldn't escape no matter how hard she tried. But fate was about to intervene in a way she never expected. One afternoon, while visiting her aunt Nkechi, an elderly woman known for her deep spiritual insight and connection to ancestral world, Chisom was met with a warning that changed everything. Aunt Nkechi was a woman of great wisdom, often speaking in riddles and metaphor, but her words always carried weight. She had always been the one to guide Chisom, offering advice and counsel whenever life became too difficult to bear. As they sat together sipping tea in the warmth of the afternoon sun, Aunt Nkechi suddenly grew silent, her eyes narrowing, as if she could see something Chisom couldn't. "My child," she said slowly, "I have seen darkness following you, a shadow, one you trust, but it is not what it seems. Beware the one who smiles the brightest, for she may be the one who brings the deepest harm." Chisom's heart skipped a beat. She knew exactly who her aunt was talking about, but she couldn't bring herself to believe it. Amaka, her best friend. It seemed impossible. She had known Amaka for years, and the thought that her closest confidant would have dark intention was unfathomable. But Aunty Nkechi's warning weighed heavily on her heart. "What do you mean, Aunty Nkechi? What should I do?" Aunty Nkechi's face softened, and she sighed deeply. "Trust your heart, my dear. If you feel something is wrong, you must follow the feeling. The truth will reveal itself in time, but only if you are willing to see it." Chisom left her auntie's house that day with a heavy heart, her mind racing with questions. Was Amaka truly capable of betrayal? She the one responsible for the growing distance between her and Ifeanyi? Was she orchestrating her pain? Determined to find answers, Chisom began to investigate, though she wasn't sure what she was looking for. She started small, combing through Amaka's social media, rereading old messages between them, and paying closer attention to the things Amaka said when they were together. At first, there was nothing, just small talk, harmless comment, the same friendly gestures that had always been there, but soon things began to feel different. One evening, as Chisom was going through Amaka's phone, she stumbled across something that made her blood run cold. An encrypted conversation that seems to hint at a plan to separate her from Ifeanyi once and for all. The messages were cryptic, but the intentions were clear. Amaka was trying to manipulate Ifeanyi into believing Chisom was the problem. She was planting the seed for future where Ifeanyi would be hers and hers alone. The truth began to emerge slowly, but with each piece Chisom uncovered, it became harder to ignore. Amaka had been working in the shadows all along. Her words, her action, a calculated move to tear apart the bond between Chisom and Ifeanyi. Just as Chisom's suspicion was beginning to crystallize, an unexpected event forced everything into open. One evening, while Chisom was at home, She overheard a conversation between Amaka and someone Chisom couldn't recognize. They were speaking in hushed tones, but the words were unmistakable. I can't let her get in the way anymore. Amaka's voice hissed. We need to get rid of Chisom once and for all. If I can't have Ifani, no one will. Chisom's heart stopped. The betrayal was no longer a shadow. It was real, undeniable and dangerous. What Chisom didn't know was that Ifani had overheard the entire conversation. He had been passing by Amaka's house, trying to figure out how to make things right with Chisom. When he heard the unmistakable word that made his blood boil, Amaka was plotting to destroy everything, to destroy Chisom. In that moment, Ifani's world shifted. The woman he had once trusted, his closest confidant, was the one who had been poisoning his relationship from the start. The woman who had claimed to be there for him was the one who had been scheming behind his back. The pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place, but it was too late to turn back. The damage had been done, and now Chisom, Ifani, and Namaka were all caught in a dangerous game. Ifani's heart pounded as he stood face to face with Amaka, his hand clenched into fist. He couldn't believe what he had just heard, what he had just witnessed. The woman who had been by his side through every struggle, every triumph, was the same woman who had orchestrated the very destruction of his relationship with Chisom. His mind was a whirlwind, the weight of the revelation crashing down on him with the force of a tidal wave. I heard everything, Amaka, Ifani said, his voice thick with anger and disbelief. You were planning to get rid of Chisom, to take her place in my life. How long, Amaka? How long have you been doing this? Amaka, standing there with a look of cold defiance, met his gaze without a flicker of remorse. I don't know what you are talking about, she said, her voice calm and steady, as though she hadn't just been caught in a web of lies. You have always been so quick to doubt me, Ifani. I'm your friend. I have always been there for you. Chisom is the one who has been distanced, not me. You are just confused. Her words was a carefully crafted performance designed to twist the truth into something unrecognizable. It was the same game she has been playing all along, gaslighting, manipulating and convincing everyone around her that she was innocent. But Ifani wasn't fooled anymore. He had had enough, seen enough. The evidence was undeniable. But Amaka wasn't finished yet. She smiled, a thin cruel smile that barely touched her eyes. You think Chisom can be trusted? She's the one who pushed you away. I'm the one who has been there for you through everything. You don't need her. You never did. Ifani turned on his heel and stormed out of the room, his heart torn between his anger for Amaka and his desire to save whatever was left of his relationship with Chisom. But as he walked away, Amaka's word lingered in his mind like a poison. Was Chisom really to be blamed? Had he mixed something all along? Meanwhile, Chisom was on her own journey of discovery. The truth, painful as it was, has been slowly unfolding before her eyes, but nothing could prepare her for what was about to uncover. While going through some old letters in a box her mother had left, Chisom stumbled upon a letter that sent chills down her spine. It was a letter from years ago written by Amaka, and it was addressed to someone Chisom didn't recognize, a name from the past, someone who had been very close to Amaka. The letter, dated years before Chisom and Ifani had even met, revealed something truly shocking. Amaka had been planning to tear apart Chisom's life from the moment they had become friends. She had been manipulating situations, creating dramas, and even interfering in relationships in a desperate attempt to secure Ifani for herself. Her scheming went back further than Chisom had ever imagined. A dark trail of betrayal had been carefully hidden behind a veil of friendship and loyalty. Chisom's hand trembled as she read the letter, each word hitting her like a blow to the chest. Amaka had been working against her from the very beginning. The love, the trust, the bond they had all shared. It had been a lie, a means to an end. Just as the full weight of the betrayal hit Chisom, sudden noise interrupted her thought. She turned, her heart racing, to see Amaka standing in the doorway, her expression twisted into something dark and dangerous. You are really going to expose me, Chisom? Amaka's voice was low, filled with venom. After everything I've done for you, you are going to destroy me just like that. Before Chisom could react, Amaka lunged at her, grabbing the letter from her hands and tearing it into shreds. The desperation in Amaka's eyes was palpable, as though she was fighting for her very life. You don't know what you are doing. You don't know what this means. Amaka shouted, her hands shaking with rage. Chisom backed away, her breath shallow as she tried to make a sense of the situation. She couldn't believe this was happening. Her once beloved friend, the one who had stood by her, was now the very person trying to silence her. In a moment of sheer panic, Amaka made a final dangerous move. She lunged at Chisom with a force that knocked her to the ground. For a brief moment, the world around Chisom spun, and she realized just how far Amaka was willing to go to maintain control. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a fight of survival, and Amaka was determined to win it at any cost. But just as Amaka raised her hand to strike, there was a loud crash from the door. It was Ifeanyi rushing in, his face a mass of fury and disbelief. "Amaka, stop!" he yelled, grabbing her by the hands and pulling her off Chisom. The room fell silent, but the damage was already done. The web of lies that Amaka had spent years weaving was unraveling before their eyes, and there was no going back. Chisom, shaking and bruised, looked up at Ifeanyi, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and anger. "She's been lying to us all along, Ifeanyi. All of this, everything we have been through, it was hers." Amaka, struggling in Ifeanyi's grip, shot Chisom a glare full of hatred and desperation. "You don't know what you are dealing with. Chisom, I will destroy you," she spat. "I will take everything from you. You have no idea what I'm capable of." Ifeanyi held her tighter, his grip firm, but he knew this was just the beginning. Amaka's dark secret was finally coming out to light, but the battle was far from over. Chisom's heart was broken, but now she had the truth. The web of lies had unraveled, but the damage it had caused might be irreversible. The question was now, what would be left standing when the dust finally settled? The storm had finally broken, but the aftermath was just beginning. The walls of deception which Amaka had so carefully built were crumbling faster than she could rebuild them. So, heartbroken but resolute, and finally seeing through the veil of lies, Ifeanyi, consumed with guilt and anger over his blindness to Amaka's manipulation, had made it his mission to make things right with Chisom and to expose the woman who had betrayed them both. Together, Chisom and Ifeanyi began to put the pieces of puzzle together. They dug deeper into Amaka's past, finding disturbing pattern of manipulation, betrayal and even sabotage. Every detail deemed to fit perfectly into the dark narrative they were uncovering. Amaka had been playing both of them for years, twisting their emotions, creating chaos and confusion, all to claim Ifeanyi for herself and destroy Chisom in the process. But they needed proof. They needed something that would expose her once and for all. And that was when Ifeanyi remembered something critical. Amaka has always been secretive about her past, often changing the subject whenever it came up. Her history, the things she had done before they had met, were buried in the shadow. If they could bring those secrets to light, they could end the torment once and for all. With the help of a few trusted allies, Chisom and Ifeanyi set a plan in motion. They called for a village meeting, an event where all the elders and key members of the community would gather to address important issues. It was certain where the truth would be exposed, where secrets would no longer be hidden before charms and lies. On the day of the meeting, the village hall was buzzing with whispers, curiosity hanging in the air. Amaka had no idea what was coming. As she arrived dressed in her usual air of confidence, she couldn't have known that her life was about to be shattered. Chisom stood at the front, her heart pounding but her resolve strong. Beside her, Ifeanyi watched with a look of grim determination. The time of silence was over. They were ready to confront Amaka and reveal everything. The meeting began with small talk, the usual chatter about village affairs, but it didn't take long for Chisom to rise. She stepped forward, addressing the gathering crowd, her voice steady but filled with the weight of the truth she was about to tell. "Today, I stand before you all." With a heavy heart, Chisom began, her eyes scanning the room. "I had always trusted those closest to me, but today I must expose a betrayal so dark, so deep that it has affected us all." She paused, glancing at Ifeanyi, who gave her a subtle nod of encouragement. "This woman," Chisom continued, pointing at Amaka, "has spent years weaving a web of lies, deceit and manipulation. She has sabotaged relationships, created chaos and manipulated us all for her own gain." Gas rippled through the room as the villagers exchanged confused and worried looks. Amaka's confident facade began to falter. She had always been the life of every gathering, the one everyone trusted and admired. But now her hold was beginning to unravel. Amaka had been poisoning Ifeanyi and my relationship for years. Chisom continued, "She's not the friend she claims to be. She's a schemer who had tried to ruin my life. She had plotted to take everything from me and to take Ifeanyi from me, to have him for herself." The village hall fell into a stunned silence. Amaka's face drained of color as Chisholm's word rang out. Her once perfect world beginning to crack. She tried to interject, to defend herself, but Chisom was not done. I'm not done, Chisom said, her voice louder now, filled with the weight of her pain and anger. I have found proofs of Amaka's treachery. Letters, messages, conversation that expose everything she has done to destroy me, to destroy our love. She pulled out the letters she had discovered earlier, the ones that had been written by Amaka, showing her plans to tear apart Chisholm's relationship with Ifeanyi. The evidence was irrefutable. The room was in an uproar, everyone now realizing just how deeply Amaka had deceived them all. As the truth came to light, the villagers began murmuring among themselves. Their trust in Amaka shattered beyond repair. Her carefully constructed image of the perfect friend and confidant was collapsing. In a desperate bid to salvage her reputation and escape the wrath of the community, Amaka tried to speak over Chisom, her voice shaky but defiant. This is all lies. You don't know what you are talking about. I've always been there for you, for all of you, she shouted, her voice cracking with desperation. But no one was listening to her anymore. The elders stood up, their faces grim, as they exchanged looks of disappointment and anger. You have lied to us, Amaka, one elder said. You have deceived the entire village for your own gain. Amaka's eyes darted around the room, panic slowly creeping into her expression. She realized too late that she was trapped. The people she had manipulated, the trust she had so easily taken for granted was gone, and with it her freedom. The weight of the community's judgment was heavier than she could bear. Seeing no way out, Amaka's panic took over without warning. She turned and fled, pushing past the villagers and running out of the hall. Her heart raced, her breath coming in quick gasps as she desperately sought to escape from the consequences of her action. But there was nowhere to run. The truth had caught up with her, and now she had nowhere to hide. The village meeting had exposed the darkness that Amaka had hidden for so long, and while she might have run, she could never outrun the consequences of her lies. As Chisom and Ifeanyi watched her disappear into the distance, they both knew that the battle was far from over. But at least now the truth was out. The darkness has been exposed, and no one, not even Amaka, could undo what has been done.